Welcome, friend. I'm Jack, host of the channel, and today we're diving into another episode. Pour yourself a drink and get comfortable, because I've got a powerful story coming your way. If something hits deep, drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it.
This weekend, it was our turn to host a party, which we do about once every 6 weeks. Our group consists of 6 people, 3 couples who typically gather at one of our homes. The attendees are Maria's friend Lisa and her husband Mark, our neighbor Jenny and her current husband Tim. Occasionally, others join us, but this core group remains constant. We're all in our 20s and none of us have kids. This is either by choice or circumstance. Lisa and Mark have opted not to have children, while Tim has 2 kids from his previous marriage who live with his ex-wife. He's actively seeking custody of them. Our parties usually involve food, drinks, and a themed activity. Sometimes it's a simple game of cards, watching sports on TV, or if we're at Tim's place, we'll swim in his pool, weather permitting. The girls, especially Lisa and Maria, take charge of organizing these gatherings, coordinating through phone calls to ensure everyone can attend on a particular date. Maria enjoys chatting and gossiping on the phone, and she's quite adept at organizing events. Maria is a voluptuous woman with wavy light brown hair. She enjoys flirting a bit, which can occasionally drive me up the wall. While she thrives on attention, she's always remained faithful to our relationship. I hail from a coastal town in Oregon, where my family still resides. After graduating from a state university with a degree in finance, I became a certified financial planner. Though somewhat introverted, I found joy in studying money markets, statistics, and economic history. My father's reputable insurance business in our city lent me credibility in the financial world. I was actually named after my father, Joseph Washburn, and go by JW. Initially, I rented office space in his building. I diligently set up meetings with clients, explaining my conservative yet growth-oriented investment approach. While affiliated with a national firm, I also conducted independent research, which I found fulfilling. My first year as a financial planner was moderately successful. Clients saw solid returns, often outperforming the market. Sharing office space with my father allowed me to inherit some of his long-term clients, whom I prioritized getting to know personally. However, by my second year, it became evident that our city lacked the necessary business opportunities to sustain my financial goals. As a student of economics, I realized I needed to expand beyond our city's limits. The weather cooperated for our latest party, so we opted to dine outside on our spacious terrace equipped with a barbecue and open kitchen. When I asked Maria about tonight's theme, she suggested we play a lively and entertaining game, sparking a bit of friendly competition to ensure maximum enjoyment. Personally, I was content with the company, indulging in food, drinks, and perhaps an extra glass or 2 of wine. "What game?" I asked. "Don't sweat it, JW, I'll take care of it. You just focus on getting the barbecue ready," she replied. That was fine by me. I started mulling over the group scheduled to gather that evening. First up were Lisa and Mark. Lisa and Maria had been pals since middle school. Lisa, a tad plump but well-proportioned, sported ample assets. She had a penchant for flaunting them in low-cut tops, a habit I sometimes had to veto in Maria's wardrobe choices. Mark, a diesel mechanic at a large city shop, was a good-natured guy. Despite Lisa's flirtatious antics, he remained unfazed. A big fellow, probably around 6'3" inches or so, Mark was all right, though I doubt we'd be pals if not for Maria and Lisa's connection. Then there were Jenny and Tim, our neighbors. How we got so close, I couldn't recall. Jenny had a plain face, but an exceptional figure, more lean than Maria's voluptuousness, with a natural thinness. She was sharp, and oddly enough, I found we shared the most common ground in the group. Tim was a golfer, slim, standing at approximately 5'9". There was a certain cockiness about him that initially rubbed me the wrong way, but I learned to tolerate it. Trust was another matter, though. Still, he added a spark of wit and liveliness to our gatherings. Just then, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of guests. Meanwhile, I made plans to relocate my financial planning practice to the city, joining a firm there. I'd still maintain my practice back in our coastal town, just a 2-hour drive away. The idea was to spend a week each month there, staying with my folks while meeting with clients. So far, the transition had been smooth. I shared an apartment in the trendy Maples neighborhood near downtown with Julian Lee, an old college buddy who worked as an ad specialist for a major bank. The neighborhood boasted walkable access to my office and an array of dining, drinking, and shopping options. It was a vibrant, youthful enclave. It was at one of the local bars where I first encountered Maria, who worked at Luna's, a chic eatery and watering hole nearby. To me, she exuded a Playboy bunny vibe, sensual and stunning, always dressed to accentuate her curves and cleavage. She tended bar with effortless allure. Our conversation flowed, with Maria showing a keen interest in my life, career, and aspirations. A bit surprising, given my mundane role as a financial planner. In high school, I dated Gail Benson, a lovely, smart girl. We attempted to keep the flame alive through college, but eventually called it quits. Though I had a few flings during those years, a steady girlfriend eluded me. On the night we met, I almost mustered the courage to ask Maria out, sensing a mutual interest. Yet I hesitated, fearing rejection and the awkward aftermath. "Man, she's smoking," Julian remarked. "You into her? You got to ask her out." "You think so?" I asked. "Better act fast before someone beats you to it." The following evening, I ventured to Luna's solo and arranged a date with Maria for Sunday night, and so it began. I was a bit nervous. Never had I been with such a stunning woman, yet she showed clear interest in me. It didn't take long before she signaled her interest unmistakably. Lovemaking with Maria was unlike anything I'd ever known. Despite having had other carnal partners, including my high school sweetheart Gail, I was a mere novice compared to her expertise. We explored every avenue, her guidance proving invaluable. Maria's physique was exquisite, her bosom shapely, her behind neither too slender nor overly curvaceous, soft, alluring, undeniably feminine. Sometimes I pondered her proficiency, her vast experience evident, yet delving into our carnal history seemed fraught with discomfort. Any apprehension I harbored paled in comparison to the sheer ecstasy she provided. We lounged on our back porch, having finished dinner and sipping on 2 glasses of wine each. I might have indulged in a 3rd glass of red, engaged in a lengthy conversation with Mark about his aspirations for a managerial role at the diesel shop where he toiled. He pondered attending the owner's church, a devout man, to curry favor. Advising against insincerity, I encouraged him to weigh his options carefully. As we idly chatted, Lisa inquired, "So, Maria, what's the plan for tonight?" "All right," Maria began. "Keep an open mind. This is just for kicks. We're playing truth or dare." Internally, I groaned. Yet Mark, Lisa, and Tim erupted in applause, signaling their approval. Maria flashed a smile my way before turning her attention back to Lisa, grinning. Mark and Tim joined in, while Jenny, with a faint smile, seemed less enthused. The game kicked off innocuously enough, laced with subtle carnal undertones, nothing too scandalous. "Who's your celebrity crush?" "What age did you lose your chastity?" and so on. Then it was Tim's turn to pose a challenge. He singled out Maria, who opted for a dare. "Maria, how about ditching either your shorts or your top?" "Wait a sec," I interjected. "Is this all right? I mean, are you wearing anything under there?" Maria reassured. "It's cool. I've got underwear on. It's like a swimsuit." Maria thrived on attention, her behavior occasionally teetering on the edge. While I appreciated her self-assured sensuality as something uniquely mine, I had no desire for others to encroach upon our closeness. Without hesitation, she shed her top, revealing a lacy white bra that left little to the imagination. Her mammary gland peeked through the sheer fabric, her bosom swaying gently. Standing proudly, Maria basked in the admiration of Tim and Mark, with Lisa's giggles punctuating the scene. "You go, girl," Maria reveled in the spotlight. Though inwardly perturbed, I kept my thoughts to myself. Everything proceeded smoothly until Lisa dared Maria to reveal her entirely unclothed bosom. In contrast to my reaction, her husband Mark cheered her on. She exposed them, and they were certainly sizable, not my preference, but sizable. Laughter erupted all around, except from Jenny and myself. I suggested one more round. Then let's call it quits on this game. There were a few laughs and objections, but I worried we might be pushing boundaries. It was Maria's turn, and she picked Tim. All right, give it a shot, Tim challenged. Sure, show your package in your pants for 10 seconds, Maria dared. Don't you dare, Jenny retorted. With that, Tim stood, unzipped his pants, and dropped his shorts and boxers. He was 6 inches flaccid, not skinny. Both Maria and Lisa looked to me, and I was stunned while Mark chuckled. Tim even did a little dance resembling a male dancer. Maria seemed fixated on his member. Just then, Jenny declared, "I'm out," looking furious. She told Tim he could either get in the car dressed or walk home. With that, everyone departed, and the party was officially over. As we tidied up, Maria was unusually quiet. "This went too far, don't you think?" I ventured. "Oh, like not. It was all in good fun," she quipped. "Maria, people were getting undressed or almost undressed, including you," I pointed out. "I'll show you undressed," she teased, beginning to undress. I quickly averted my gaze, feeling both carnally satisfied and uneasy about the evening's events. I resolved to have a serious discussion about boundaries the next day. I wasn't the type to enjoy my wife exposing herself to other men. The following morning, I rose early for a run, planning the conversation I intended to have with Maria. I intended to emphasize that while I enjoyed a good time, our bodies were sacred to our marriage vows. I was unwavering on this matter. Upon my return, I heard Maria laughing on the phone. She must have noticed my presence as the laughter ceased abruptly, and the volume lowered. I could have sworn I heard the word undressing before she realized I was there. "Who was that?" I asked. "Just Lisa," she giggled. She and Mark had a blast and declared our party the best so far. Speaking of which, I think we need to discuss some of the events from last night, especially your behavior. Maria was typically easygoing, so it took considerable effort to upset her, but my comment managed to do just that. She insisted it was innocent fun, nothing to fret about, and that no one else was bothered and nothing untoward happened. I tried to soothe her, reason with her, and express my feelings, but she remained disinterested. After she lashed out at me, silence fell as I began working in the yard. I mowed over my emotions. I didn't think I was being unreasonable. I wanted to give her the freedom to be herself. After all, that's who I married. I appreciated her love of freedom, but when it came to closeness, I believed it should be exclusively ours, including the sight of her body. I have to admit I was a bit unsure of myself. Maria is a stunning, attractive woman while I'm just a simple financial planner. I know I look good and stay in shape, but I'm aware she attracts attention from all kinds of guys. I have no real reason to doubt her fidelity, but there were a few incidents before we got married that raised my concerns. We'd been dating for almost 3 months then, and were engaged almost throughout. I felt a strong connection with Maria. We had some meaningful conversations, and I learned about her life. Her father's departure left her, her mother, and her older sister. Maria craved male attention, and as soon as her body developed, she received it. I didn't delve into her carnal history, but it seemed by the time she was 16, she wasn't a maiden anymore. It sounded like she had boyfriends and casual flings, as she put it. No wonder she never had trouble finding the next one. She loved attention and knew her looks could easily attract guys. We received an invitation to a casual acquaintances party the following Saturday evening. Though we hadn't formalized our exclusivity yet, in my opinion, we were exceptional. She professed her love for me, and to me, love and exclusivity went hand in hand. It was December, and the party was slightly more upscale than usual. When I saw what Maria was wearing, my eyes nearly popped out of my head. It was a red dress that barely covered her chest. "You like my dress?" she teased. "Maria, you look great, but wow, that's quite revealing," I remarked. "You know I might have clients there, and well, that's a bit much." Maria doesn't get angry often, but when she does, it's usually about her appearance. This time was no different. She got upset, accusing me of thinking she looked trashy and assuming she'd embarrass me. It took some time, but eventually I apologized. Despite the chilly weather, we went to the party, and she wore the dress. The house was grand, perched on the hills, adorned with beautiful decorations and overflowing with food and drink. Among the guests were some of my colleagues, acquaintances from college, and fellow members of the sports club I belonged to. There was a guy at the party I remembered from college, Malcolm, a charming yet conceited fellow with an insincere smile and slicked back black hair. He sauntered around with a mischievous grin and a glass of champagne. Then he caught sight of Maria. Maria garnered considerable attention, primarily from men, much of it fixated on her cleavage. Despite this, she was attentive to me, and suddenly I found myself becoming popular among colleagues and casual acquaintances. At one point, I stepped away to grab a drink, and upon returning, I found Malcolm engrossed in conversation with Maria, seemingly oblivious to my presence. She reveled in the attention, particularly from this charming fellow who hung on her every word. I managed to pull her away, but as parties tend to progress, people inevitably drift apart, and Maria and I found ourselves separated, engaging in discussions with some colleagues. I gained valuable insights into business ideas. However, I soon realized it had been over an hour since I last saw Maria. I discreetly scanned the living room, kitchen, and adjacent family room, but she was nowhere to be found. Malcolm was also absent. Stepping out into the brisk winter air where a group of people were smoking, I searched for Maria to no avail. As I headed back inside, her laughter reached me from the street. Peering out, I spotted Maria and Malcolm strolling down the sidewalk, seemingly enjoying each other's company. "Hey, honey, Jim was just showing me his new BMW," Maria exclaimed upon seeing me, with Malcolm chiming in with a joke about the car. Observing Maria, she appeared slightly disheveled, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Concealing my inner turmoil with a forced smile, I announced I was leaving and offered her a ride home. "Of course, I'll come with you," she replied, puzzled by my sudden departure. Just then, Malcolm clapped me on the back, expressing pleasure at seeing me again and extending his hand. Though not a bodybuilder, I possess a firm grip from sports. Fueled by anger towards Maria and indignation at Malcolm's audacity, I grasped his arm tightly, rendering him speechless with pain. "Honey, you've hurt him, Jim," Maria exclaimed, alarmed. "I'm sorry. It's my fault," I apologized curtly, heading towards my car without looking back. As I buckled up, Maria caught up with me. This marked our first major argument. Typically, I adored her. She was stunning, and our closeness was unparalleled. However, I knew she craved attention and measured her worth by the admiration of men. Currently, our relationship hasn't been formalized, but to me, a consistent carnal partnership with frequent emotional exchanges symbolizes mature communication. Yet, we've never explicitly discussed it. Dropping her off, I declined her invitation to stay over, citing the events of the night as my reason. "Nothing happened with Jim. We were just having fun," she assured me. "Well, that's enough excitement for me tonight. See you later," I responded, driving off. She reached out through calls and messages, but I chose to disregard them. Life carried on as I delved into my work for the week. The following week, I opted to depart on Saturday morning instead of my usual Sunday evening routine. Excitedly, I phoned my mom, who was thrilled at the prospect of my weekend visit. Back in my hometown, I had a fulfilling week with productive client meetings that furthered my success in both my coastal and city businesses, making strides toward my financial goals. I garnered attention within my organization. A week ago, I would have affirmed that my personal life was on the right track. Now, however, I couldn't make the same assertion. Despite her persistent attempts to reach out, my responses remained minimal. Inquiring about my return, I provided a date. On Friday evening, just before reaching my house, the doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Opening the door, I was met by Maria, clad in a raincoat, bearing a wrapped gift. "This is for you," she declared, handing me the package. Inside was an old-fashioned skeleton key. "You have the key to my heart," she declared. I gazed at her with conflicting emotions. With that, she unveiled herself, resembling a figure from my teenage fantasies. Any resolve I held crumbled in a wave of desire. I questioned her about the events at the party with Malcolm. "I know I shouldn't have gone out with Jim, but he was so sweet." So what happened? Nothing. He tried to flirt a bit, but I've handled guys like that since I was 15. We conversed, and I admitted my feelings of jealousy. I expressed that if she wasn't ready to commit, I would be disappointed but understanding. I'm not one to play games. I'm either in a serious relationship or not, I asserted. She assured me of her commitment and her love, initiating closeness that overwhelmed me. As I mentioned, Maria holds no grudges. The following week's truth or dare party proceeded as usual, with her embodying the same alluring and affectionate demeanor that drew me to her. I observed closely, noticing her increased attentiveness to me and decreased interaction with Lisa, at least in my presence. One Saturday, while working in my yard, Tim passed by, an occurrence not out of the ordinary. He and Jenny lived nearby. We engaged in a lengthy conversation about lawns and gardening. Despite our limited rapport, our discussion delved into his personal struggles with custody battles and his deep affection for his children. This vulnerability softened my perception of him. Perhaps I misjudged Tim. He might be a decent guy after all. Out of the blue, he inquired about Maria's whereabouts. After a rather intense discussion about his family, he shifted gears and asked about Maria. I informed him she was out shopping, swiftly steering the conversation back to his custody issues. About 15 minutes later, Maria emerged in a skimpy bikini, darting behind a screen at the far end of the backyard to greet Tim. She adores sunbathing in minimalist attire. However, we have a prying retired neighbor named Henry Anderson. Anderson is a reliable fellow who watches over our house when we're away and keeps tabs on neighborhood activities. In short, he's trustworthy but a tad inquisitive. Since he's also my client, I erected the screen for privacy. Meanwhile, Tim made every effort to catch a glimpse of Maria. I escorted him to the gate, concluding our conversation. As he exited, he jokingly called out, "Need any help with the suntan lotion, Maria?" And that was it. This incident reminded me of another occurrence. Following the incident with Malcolm, things improved significantly. In fact, everything was going splendidly. I occasionally reminisced about that event, but there was no need to dwell on it. Our relationship transitioned to a new phase afterward. I suppose I partly rationalized Maria's behavior by considering that we hadn't formalized our commitment to each other at the time, at least not publicly. Now, however, we were deeply committed. Maria was affectionate, caring, and incredibly enjoyable to be around. Did we engage in deep conversations like I had with previous girlfriends? Honestly, probably not. But we had a blast together, and carnally, she was up for anything. Plus, she was stunning. I felt proud to have her by my side in public. She began broaching gentle inquiries about our future and our long-term trajectory, prompting me to contemplate the same. To put it in perspective, I always envisioned myself driving a Camry, and suddenly I found myself behind the wheel of a Porsche. It sparked an internal tug of war. Part of me questioned whether she was the ideal match for me. Was all this enjoyment just temporary? Yet, the other part argued, "Are you out of your mind? Every man dreams of marrying a goddess. What's your hang-up?" Ultimately, the clinching argument was, if I were to end things with Maria, could any other woman physically or carnally compare to her? Thus far, no one has even come close in my life. Plus, I adored her bosom. They were simply spectacular. I proposed to her, and along with the ring, I surprised her with tickets to a Caribbean getaway. Maria was overjoyed. She adored the ring, and the trip was just a few weeks away. Maria phoned her mom in California to share the news, and she also had a lengthy chat with Lisa. I reached out to my parents and informed them, and while they seemed pleased for me, there was a hint of hesitation. "Are you sure about this?" Dad questioned. "Absolutely. Any reason for doubt?" I countered. "Well, this is a significant step. Maria is a wonderful girl. I'm very happy for you," he responded. I expressed gratitude, but later pondered if there was a subtle reservation in his enthusiasm. The resort was spectacular. It boasted a swimming pool, numerous on-site bars and restaurants, and a private beach complete with sun loungers and umbrellas. Additionally, there was a beach sports hut offering kayak rentals, jet skis, and other water activities. Upon arrival, we changed into our swimsuits for a stroll along the beach. Maria had 3 types of bikinis: hot, snug, and micro. I teased that the micro was reserved for me. "We'll see," she giggled. We grabbed drinks from the beach bar and ambled along the beautiful crescent of white sand lining the crystal-clear blue water. Maria sported a hot bikini with a sheer white wrap that left little to the imagination. As men and women cast admiring glances her way, I felt proud to be by her side. Afterward, we enjoyed a casual dinner at the pool bar. Following 2 more potent rum drinks, we retired to our room. From our balcony, we watched the sunset. Slightly intoxicated, she leaned against the railing, and I approached from behind, caressing her shoulders. My hands found their way to her exquisite bosom, and she moaned with desire. The darkness provided minimal cover, but we didn't seem to mind. As she reached climax, I soon followed suit, and our performance was met with applause from somewhere in the vicinity. The resort staff were incredibly attentive, always ready to provide towels, offer directions, or check if we needed anything to eat or drink. Then there were the beach boys, young men in their early 20s who tended to the sun loungers on the beach. Likely reliant on tips, they catered mainly to women over 40 who enjoyed the attention of younger individuals. They fetched drinks, towels, adjusted chairs or umbrellas, and upon request, applied sunscreen. Naturally, they were drawn to Maria in her skimpy bikinis, making her look incredibly alluring. One of the beach boy crews was often seen lingering nearby. He possessed smooth, sun-kissed skin, a slim physique, and a bright smile with dazzling white teeth. One day, while strolling along the beach, I suggested to Maria that she might want to ride a jet ski. "You go ahead. I'm going to work on my tan," she replied. I had an hour-long training session on a jet ski. "Have fun and be careful," she said. Riding the jet ski proved to be quite enjoyable, zooming across the ocean for just under an hour before returning to the beach. As I made my way back to the lounge chairs, I spotted the crew looming over Maria. Upon approaching, I noticed him massaging her bare back. It definitely made contact with the sides of the bosom. "What's happening here?" Cruz promptly stood up. "Mr. J.W., I don't want Miss Maria to get sunburned," he muttered. "She needs sunscreen on her back." "I can handle this myself, thank you," he added before hurrying away. "Maria, what's going on?" I asked her quietly but firmly. I didn't want to create a scene on the beach, but it was evident that the beach boy was clearly groping her. "What's happening?" "Your shirt is unbuttoned. There's barely a couple of inches of fabric covering your rear, and this guy had straightforward access to your body. That's the issue I'm addressing. Did he touch your bosom?" "Oh, honey, relax. He might have grazed the sides a bit, but they are reserved for you." Hearing that actually aroused me. I suppose I brushed aside Cruz's overly flirtatious behavior and shifted my focus to wanting to have lovemaking with her as soon as possible. I proposed taking a nap, knowing what I truly desired. I had to conceal my hardness with a towel as we made our way to our room. Eventually, the blissful moments had to come to an end, and we began discussing wedding plans on the flight back home. Maria drifted off to sleep, and I reflected on what a fantastic trip it had been. However, the persistent thought of the Latino beach boy groping her bosom lingered in my mind. Once the weekend arrived and Tim came to stay with us, life resumed its normal course. Work was demanding but fulfilling for me, and my earnings were satisfactory. I conducted most of my own financial research, and my investments appeared to be performing well. Maria also worked at Luna's bar, primarily covering lunch shifts as a waitress. This arrangement allowed us to spend most evenings together. Although Maria didn't necessarily need to work, she enjoyed it and valued having her own income. As summer approached, Maria and Lisa began discussing the next gathering for couples following the Truth or Dare party at our place. I hoped these parties would come to an end soon. After extensive discussions and planning, it was decided that the next event would be hosted by Tim and Jenny, scheduled for mid-July, just a few weeks away. Weather permitting, it was planned as a pool party. Upon hearing this, I immediately insisted to Maria that she refrained from wearing any of the bikinis from the Caribbean. I suggested wearing red instead. She adamantly refused, stating that it was one thing for strangers to see her like that, but not our friends. With no further discussion, it seemed we had reached a resolution on the matter. On the Tuesday before the party, I received a frantic call from my mom, informing me that my father had suffered a heart attack. He was admitted to the county hospital and was scheduled for bypass surgery. I assured my mother that I would come as soon as possible. After informing Maria about the situation, I quickly packed an overnight bag for both of us, and we headed to my parents' place. Despite my concern for my father's health, I also worried about my mother, who relied on my father's strength. With his health in jeopardy, I was apprehensive about how she would cope. When we reached the hospital and located my mom, there was a notable improvement. My father had experienced a minor heart attack. The bypass surgery went well, and his chances for a full recovery were highly optimistic. They planned to keep my dad in the hospital until Thursday before sending him home. I stayed with him on Tuesday night while Mom and Maria returned to the house to rest. They came back on Wednesday morning. I pressed for more details. Mark lacked specifics, but mentioned a guy named Malcolm or something similar. She said I knew him. It dawned on me that it must have been that fool Malcolm we encountered at the party before our marriage. Anger boiled within me as I stewed over this revelation. Mark seemed unfazed, simply continuing to sip his beer. It was clear I couldn't stay married to her. I needed a plan. So, if someone with more money, a better car, and a nicer house came along, Maria would leave? I queried. Mark confirmed. I'm pretty sure she would. After pondering for a few minutes, I asked about Saturday night. What about Jenny? Was she part of this? I noticed Jenny's absence in the photos. Apparently, Jenny had to leave because her sister's boyfriend caused trouble. Jenny accompanied her sister home, leaving the party open to others. So Jenny doesn't know what went down? I probed. No, and let's keep it that way, Mark responded. Don't you care that your partner sleeps with other men? I asked. Partner? We're not married. She just calls me her husband. We've been together for a while, but when I do get married, it won't be someone like Lisa. She's great and all, and I do love her in a way, but she's not the one I'll marry. That's why we don't have kids. It was time to depart. My mind buzzed with thoughts. Here were the crucial details. Maria's promiscuity surpassed expectations. Her attachment to me stemmed primarily from financial stability, and she was ready to abandon ship if a better offer emerged. Mark alone shared my secret, and for now, it would remain clandestine. Even someone as dense as Mark proved wiser in the ways of women than I. Returning to Julian, I spilled everything I learned from Mark. Amidst my sorrow, rage bubbled to the surface. Indeed, I felt humiliated. Who knows how many of them mocked me behind my back? They must face consequences. I fumed. Julian probed with questions before immersing himself in his laptop, headphones on. Sipping red wine, I stewed in escalating fury. Julian broke his concentration. She never dated John Paul, did she? He inquired. No, I confirmed. Haven't seen him since college. Why the query? Julian pressed. Can you lay hands on about $30,000? I asked, and also arranged to lease a BMW for 6 months if all pans out. He responded, a grin creeping onto his face. Finally, he revealed, I have a plan. It'll set me back $30,000 plus the BMW lease. Tomorrow, you'll head to Maria's, put on a stellar performance, then return here. Thursday post-work, John Paul arrives. The next day, I phoned Maria, assuring her of my imminent return that evening. I maintained a facade of normalcy, deflecting her concerns with worries about my father. Either my acting skills surpassed expectations, or more likely, she paid little heed to me. Thursday evening found us at Julian's after greetings. Julian outlined his scheme. John Paul will woo Maria, posing as a New York banker. He'll reluctantly unveil his wealth, captivating her with money and affection. With a play in his sights in 5 months, he must act swiftly. John Paul, 2 years Julian's junior, exuded charm with his long hair, slender frame, and winsome smile. She's sure to take a liking to him, Julian mused. I have to ask you something, buddy. John Paul turned to me. Do you mind if I sleep with her? I mean, she's your wife. I assured him I didn't mind. And let's be real, it's not like they've been celibate for 5 months. They'd probably go 5 days max, I quipped. I provided them with Maria's bar schedule, emphasizing the need for discretion. Not only did John Paul need to play his part convincingly, but I also had to play the role of a devoted, unsuspecting husband. The week passed without incident or slip-ups on my end. I kept a close eye on Maria, trying to discern any changes. Yes, we had lovemaking, I mused to myself. Lovemaking with Maria was routine, more like a physical competition than a slow romantic act. It brought satisfaction, but was also exhausting. Thursday evening, we reconvened at Julian's apartment. I was eager for the report. My hope was for Maria to fall for John Paul, but a part of me wished she wouldn't. John Paul had been to the bar 3 times. Initially, he aimed for her attention, then engaged in light conversation and jokes. During our 3rd meeting, Maria mentioned she was working from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock the next day. John Paul planned to arrive at 2 o'clock for a late lunch and coffee. I had to invest in a $200 costume to play my part. The following week passed uneventfully. I couldn't shake off thoughts of Maria and John Paul. One evening, I noticed Maria came home late. I wondered what that meant. It felt like waiting for the next episode of a favorite TV show. I couldn't wait for Thursday evening to hear the latest update. Here's what John Paul reported. They had coffee on Friday. Maria confessed to being married, but hinted at marital troubles. Appearing receptive, she agreed to lunch on Tuesday, and John Paul subtly hinted at his wealth. Life with Maria continued, but I sensed a growing distance between us. Fine. On Tuesday, I returned home a little after 5, and Maria wasn't there. After a run, I found her at home. While making dinner, I initiated a conversation. How was your day, honey? This would be interesting, I thought. Busy day at work, she replied nonchalantly. I knew it wasn't entirely true, but I played along. As we conversed, I felt us drifting apart. Our bed life remained unchanged. Looking back, it was mostly physical without much emotional connection, so faking it wasn't difficult. I decided to make it easier for her. I mentioned my father needing help, planning to leave Friday afternoon. Maria made a feeble attempt to ask if she should come too. I reassured her it wasn't necessary. I'd lend a hand and stay the following week to see clients. On Thursday evening, I received an update that John Paul's advances had progressed. What started as a Tuesday lunch turned into a passionate encounter. Upon learning I'd be out of town, they arranged to meet on Friday evening. It felt like I was orchestrating their relationship behind the scenes, manipulating the outcome to my advantage. And it worked. As weeks passed, their bond deepened. Their closeness culminated in a weekend tryst while I visited my parents' predictable. Meanwhile, our domestic relationship shifted. Maria grew distant, a change tinged with melancholy. Occasionally, glimpses of the woman I once loved emerged, evoking a sense of loss. After about 3 months, John Paul professed his love and proposed to Maria. By then, she believed he was a wealthy New York banker with a lavish Manhattan abode. When asked about her husband, Maria hinted their relationship was on the rocks, suggesting she hadn't discussed divorce yet. A few weeks later, Maria mentioned a spa trip to California with Lisa. I knew John Paul had invited her to Sun Valley. You'll love it, I encouraged. That night, I was rewarded with passionate lovemaking. I anticipated John Paul's proposal at an Idaho resort. The cubic zirconia ring, nearly $500, seemed genuine enough. Maria, convinced of John Paul's wealth, saw no reason to doubt. The following Thursday, I received a report of their romantic Sun Valley getaway. He proposed, she accepted, and Maria planned to inform me of the divorce. John Paul pressed for a swift marriage, citing his imminent return to New York. Maria assured him she'd break the news to me. My plan was to feign resistance, agreeing to retain my assets and a quick divorce. The plan unfolded seamlessly. When Maria revealed her departure plans, I reacted with shock and sadness, masking my anger. We're married. I won't let you leave. We'll work this out, I declared convincingly. Meanwhile, she met John Paul at a luxury condo funded by my money. Maria, my love, John Paul began, wooing her with promises of wealth and security. She was enticed. He proposed a deal. He'd secure my assets in exchange for an immediate divorce. Eagerly, she agreed. At home, I vacillated between anger and pleading, desperate to hold on to her. I repeatedly told her I needed months of counseling before she left. I knew she wanted a quick exit to be with a millionaire. On Friday night, she brought home instant divorce papers, waiving her rights to my assets, our home, car, and investments. I put on an Oscar-worthy performance, yelling, crying, and saying I'd never let her leave. I need time alone in the basement, I pretended, heartbroken while watching baseball with tearful eyes. I used some Vite hidden, then left with the signed papers. She left without gloating, but I noticed her confident stride. By mid-September, our divorce was set for October 5th. She forfeited her rights to my assets and planned to marry in New York by month's end. We met that Thursday at Julian's to finalize our plot. Maria would stay in her rented place for 2 weeks. On Friday, after they left, she'd come for her stuff. John Paul promised to meet her at noon with a truck to move her things to New York. By then, he'd be gone, having told her his last name was Taylor to make it hard to find him costly and difficult for her as she was broke. You're cruel, John Paul said. She was worse to me, I countered. I get it. Hate to say it, but I'll miss her in bed. She was the best, he sighed. Me too, I agreed. I kept things civil with Maria, pretending to be sorry several times, but not asking her to stay. I feared she might. That Friday, I met her as she packed, almost tempted to have one last fling, but resisted. She was dressed up, thinking she was headed somewhere special. By 12:30, she tried calling John Paul, but got no answer. She asked to use my phone with the same result. The condo said it was paid till Saturday, then rented. She wanted me to watch her stuff while she checked on John Paul. I didn't talk to her till the weekend's end. Phase 2, I said. I sent 3 packages of photos from a party they had while I was away. Tim, Lisa, Mark, and Maria were clearly shown. The first went to Mark's devout boss with a note saying, "A person's work reflects their morals, including you." Package 2 was sent to Tim's ex-wife with a note saying, "See what your ex is up to. Thank goodness the kids are with you." Package 3 went to Jenny, reading, "Looks like we missed the most amusing part of the party. Hate to break it to you, but you should know." He added, "Once things settle down, fancy a drink?" I signed all notes with my name and number. My final task was Malcolm. Maybe Julian could handle that. Maria tried to patch things up, but there was no chance. She arrived the next Monday evening, acting like she just returned from work. "Hey, sorry about the mix-up. I'm back for good." I just stared. "Maria, you've wrecked my life," I yelled. "This isn't your home. You're running off to New York." "No, I've changed my mind. I want to stay." "No more games. Forget it. Get out and stay out," I said coldly. She tried her old tricks, starting to undress. "I've fallen for that too many times," I said, closing the door. "Say hi to John Paul." Peering out the window, she looked confused, her figure on display. She tried to understand the John Paul reference, a name I'd always kept secret. "Of course," Henry Anderson said, peering over the fence. Last I knew, she was with Lisa, likely searching Carl. Not only did Mark miss the promotion, but he also got fired, leaving Lisa behind. Tim faced a custody hearing and was denied, with increased child support and limited visits. Clearly, the photos influenced the decision. One Saturday night, Jenny called frantic about Tim heading to my house drunk and armed. He'd found the source of the messages. I hurried to the backyard, setting up a fake person under blankets as if reading outside. A light was on for attention, and I hid in bushes with a baseball bat. Even without Jenny's call, I'd have heard him. Tim knocked, then entered the backyard, spotting the setup and firing twice. His first shot likely broke his arm. My next swings were aimed lower. I called the police. No special investigation was needed. I defended myself, and Tim faced attempted homicide charges. I thanked Jenny for the tip. "You're welcome," she said. "Now, did you offer me something to drink?"
Thanks for hanging out with me on today's episode, brother. I'm Jack, host of this podcast, and it's great having you here. If today's story hit home, send it on to a buddy who might need it. Remember, we're all in this together, turning life's curvy balls into wins. If you have an opinion or story to share, then drop a line in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out. Until next time, keep your chin up and keep pushing forward. Stay strong, folks.